These are the coins that came from the expedition of Jacques Cousteau in 1976?
Yes, a lot of silver and bronze coins.
So 36 silver coins plus some bronze coins?
Some bronze coins.
Okay, so this has a basket on it.
It has a basket introduced by the kings of Pergamon. Most of the coins were struck in Pergamon, around, let's say, 30 of them, and the rest were struck in Ephesus.
But what do you think they actually tell us about where the ship came from?
They can tell us that the ship came from Asia Minor.
What date would this be?
And these are dated in the decade from 70 to 60 before Christ.
These coins from the cargo had given us our first clues to the likely date and route of the ship's last voyage.
So what were these Greek treasures and the strange Antikythera mechanism doing on a Roman ship 2,000 years ago?
Since the time of Homer, the Greeks had been great sailors, forging settlements and remote colonies in places such as Pergamon in Asia Minor and further north in the Black Sea. And everywhere the Greeks went, they left giant temples to the gods that protected them. But by the time the galley sank in the middle of the 1st century BC, these far-flung Greek settlements had become vulnerable to a hostile new power in the Mediterranean, Rome.
But as we looked closer at the Antikythera cargo, we began to realize this wasn't a marauding Roman warship plundering Greek colonies, but something more unusual.
It was a quite big ship, probably a huge big for this period, for these Roman times. One of the probably biggest trade ships. Only a few harbors can receive this kind of ship, and that is probably Delos, Pergamum and Ephesus, that region, Rhodes.
Tell me about where these amphorae come from.
Look, these amphoras, these 5 amphoras, they're coming from Rhodes, from the island of Rhodes. These 2 of them, they're coming from the island of Kos. They were containing wine.
Tell me what you can say about the date of these amphorae and therefore the date of the shipwreck.
These amphoras, they are between 65 and 50 BC.
These dates were almost identical to those we'd found on the coins from the wreck.
So we believe that the galley started its journey somewhere in the Greek colonies in Asia Minor. Possibly Pergamon, possibly Ephesus, but somewhere along this coast. The ship would have sailed down, probably calling in at Kos, then onto Rhodes, where it loaded more amphorae, and then set out, heavily overloaded, on the trade route back to Rome, where it met its fate in a storm at the island of Antikythera.
Some of the ship's cargo had been dated very accurately to between 70 BC and 50 BC. Perhaps this was now close to the vessel's last voyage. But the group couldn't be entirely sure the bronze mechanism really was 2,000 years old. Perhaps it was a modern machine that had been dropped from a passing ship, by chance coming to rest on the wreck the sponge divers had found. So the team decided to scrutinize previous work done on the machine.
The team were drawn to the work of Derek de Solla Price. He was an English-born physicist. He started work in the 1950s, first in Cambridge and later in Yale. He was the first to really examine the pieces in very great detail, and he started doing radiographs and being able to see the insides of the mechanism. Suddenly, out of those radiographs, they realized there were 27 gears inside this thing. It was seriously complicated.
Price was the first person to count the gear teeth with
Yes.
Caracalos, and Caracalos'
his
wife as well.
Emily.
Yes, yes.
They did it by drawing around the gears and literally just counting it. So it wasn't surprising they didn't get entirely accurate all the time.
But all the two-dimensional X-rays of the gears were overlapping, making this task formidable. Price realized if he could find the exact tooth count on a gear wheel, it might begin to unlock the mechanism.
So Price had identified a 127-tooth gear in the X-rays of the mechanism.
He also had the number 235. And these two numbers are very important in ancient Greek astronomy.
Price wondered whether an ancient astronomer might be using the 127 gear wheel to follow the movement of the moon. This was a revolutionary idea.
Price was beginning to have sleepless nights worrying about the authenticity of the mechanism. If the ancient Greek scientists could produce these gear systems 2,000 years ago, the whole history of Western technology would have to be rewritten.
The team believed such sophistication was surely beyond the great achievements the ancient Greeks had made more than 2 millennia earlier. They are regarded as some of the most creative people the world has ever known. 2,500 years ago, they began a revolution in thinking, followed by technical advances comparable to those of the Industrial Revolution. This peaked in the 5th century BC, when Athens, the largest city-state, produced magnificent art and architecture that is still revered today. In 9 years,